everyone, Jordan here, and today we have a new Minecraft video. Today, we're going to be showcasing Southwest Airlines Boeing 737-500 fleet and all three of the liveries that were shown on this aircraft before they were retired, and we'll be showing it on our 2-to-1 737-500. Without further ado, let's get started. I'm excited. Now, the 737-500 is an interesting airplane in the Southwest Airlines fleet. It was originally ordered to be the longer range airplane for the airline so it could fly the transcontinental routes that the 737-200 and 737-300 could not operate. However, when Southwest took delivery of these airplanes in the early 1990s, Boeing had already begun development of the 737 Next Generation family, which combined the range of the 500, if not greater, the range of the 500 with the capacity of the 300 and the 737-700 model. So, by the time the 700 came out, it effectively made the 500s an obsolete fleet type since the 700 could do everything that the 500 could do, if not more. Because of this, Southwest Airlines only operated a relatively small fleet of 25 737-500s in their lifetime. These airplanes spanned from the early 1990s to about the mid-2010s, retiring roughly around 2015 or 2016, if I can remember correctly. But because of this, and because this was such a small fleet number and not a really used airplane in the airline's fleet, the airline never painted them in the Heart livery, and they ended up being retired, with the final livery being Canyon. Anyways, we're going to start with the Desert Gold livery, which was the first livery that saw usage on the 737-500 for Southwest Airlines. Now, at the nose of the airplane, you can see the black visor, which is an anti-glare paint, which stops light from reflecting into the cockpit and blinding the pilots. We have the nose of the airplane, and then we have the forward exit right here. We have the CFM56 engines, and then we have the wing. Now, as you can note, there are no winglets on this aircraft, even though the 737-500 was later certified for winglets, but Southwest Airlines never equipped them, despite all the other airplanes in their fleet aside from the 200s being equipped with winglets. Anyways, we have the flapjack fairings in their distinct classic format that are different than the 737 Next Generation and Max. These are much bigger, especially this inboard flapjack fairing that is nearly the size and connects to the pylon. As we move to the rear of the airplane, we have the horizontal stabilizers and the auxiliary power unit, as well as the APU air intake on the right side. We also have the outflow valve, which helps regulate pressure, and the rest of the airplane over here. On the right side of the airplane, we have some cargo bays, as well as a forward cargo bay at the front as well. Now, an interesting thing about the Desert Gold livery is that it is effectively just the brand of colors that were reused when Southwest Airlines was originally coming up with their new paint scheme. So when Southwest Airlines was rebranded from Air Southwest to Southwest Airlines, and Boeing was looking to find out what colors to paint it, they effectively just took the leftover colors from Braniff and made the Desert Gold livery. So, what do you know? Anyways, as we continue onwards, we have another livery that came after this one. We have the Shamu livery. Now, Southwest Airlines partnered with SeaWorld in the late 1980s and early 1990s with a partnership that extended until approximately 2014, and they painted a total of 5 737s in a Shamu livery. 3 of them, Shamu 1, 2, and 3, were on the 737 Classic, with Shamu 1, I believe, being on a 300 and 2 and 3 being on 500s, and the other 2 737 Shamu liveries being on the 700s. Anyways, as we go to the front of the airplane, you can see very similar again. We just have the Shamu paint scheme that mimics an orca at the front of the airplane, and then towards the rear we have the fin of the orca. I'm really impressed with how this livery turned out. I think it looks quite cool, and it is just something that I was really happy with how it's done, and I'm just really happy with the design of this. Keep saying it's really happy. Well, I'm just pleased with how this turned out. I didn't think it would look this good. But anyways, relatively straightforward. Unfortunately, these liveries did not stay in the fleet all that long. The 500s were soon repainted into the standard livery, although the 300 kept the Shamu livery and was inevitably painted into the Canyon Blue iteration, which that was then retired by the 700s variants, which that was then retired and replaced by Penguin 1, and then the partnership ended around 2014. Lastly, we have a Southwest Airlines Canyon Blue livery, which was the final livery that the 737-500 flew in its fleet. This is the livery that was technically called the Spirit livery officially, and was debuted in 2001, and was quite a departure from the desert colors of the previous era. Now, this livery is what I mostly remember the 500s when I flew on them. It's pretty cool. I really like this design. It's relatively straightforward. It's very similar to all of the other variants, but it's just nice and kind of cute with how stubby the airplane is. But a little interesting thing you might have noticed is that the eyebrows are gone. Southwest Airlines started plugging their eyebrows around this era, as they did with the 700s. But yeah, Anyways, though, nothing much has really changed. As you can see, here's the rest of the airplane, here's the tail, and here's the back of it. Nothing much too crazy, but yeah. Now, the video doesn't end just there. We actually can talk about the cabins because each of these airplanes have their own custom cabin that are different. So we're going to start on board the Southwest Airlines Desert Gold livery right here, which features their backwards facing original seat design that was in use in the 1980s and 90s. Now, Southwest Airlines originally had a dark maroon or a very reddish panel and bulkhead color. And at the time, Southwest Airlines had one of the highest seating configurations of the 737 with backwards facing seats. So at the very front, they had backwards facing seats, they had a divider, and then, there's Andrew, and then they had these what they called roller coaster seats at the overwing exits with backwards facing seats as well. And as you went to the back of the airplane, there was another section with, again, backwards facing seats. Now, this was discontinued when the 737-700 was introduced as legislation changed and made that these seating arrangements were no longer legal in the eyes of the FAA. But this was just a really cool thing. I had the opportunity to fly on an airplane like this once with the tan seats. It's kind of nuts, especially when you see the backwards facing seats on a 737 like this, because as far as I'm aware, nobody else does this anymore. But yeah, you can also see kind of the maroon overhead bins, which, are a classic design because remember, this is an interior from the 1980s and 1990s. It's kind of old and it's just very retro in style, but yeah, very, very cool. If we continue onwards to the Shamu livery, nothing else has really changed, but I just want to make a little note that on the Shamu airplanes, they actually had advertisements for SeaWorld all over the overhead bins. Unfortunately, I don't have the space to do that in this tiny scale of 2:1, but just an interesting little tidbit on the history of the airplane that there were advertisements all over the overhead bins and in the airplane. It was a real custom interior for the Shamu fleet to kind of showcase the partnership with SeaWorld and Southwest Airlines. The last cabin that we can show today is the Spirit cabin. This was introduced with the Canyon Blue livery refresh and brand refresh, which shows a new color palette with the blue and orange seats that, again, I remember all the time from my childhood. As you can see, no more backwards facing seats. The regulations changed and it was no longer legal to fly with that. So Southwest went with a standard economy layout that you probably are more familiar with now. Anyways, at the front of the airplane, we have the bulkheads that are kind of with a little divider in color. We have a blue, orange, and then blue. We have the seat designs, overwing exits, and as we come to the rear, we just have the rear bulkhead and then just the aft lavatory and a little galley. So nothing too crazy, but this is the Southwest cabin that I most remember growing up with on whenever I flew on the classics and whatnot. I really liked it. Seats were very comfortable, so yeah, quite nice. And last but not least, this is what the cockpit looks like. It's very, very small. As you can see, again, it's 2:1, not a lot of space, but yeah, here it is. So these are where the first officer and the captain sits. These are the controls, and here's the dash and the main panel and overhead panel right here. And yeah, just another little interesting tidbit is that the 737-300s and 500s for Southwest Airlines never got any EFIS upgrade. They never got a glass display or anything. They flew them completely analog all the way until their retirement, which is really odd because all the other airlines, well, at least that I'm aware of in the United States, ended up upgrading their 737 Classics, and Southwest did not. Although they did have plans to upgrade their 737 Classic fleet with the new avionics in around 2008, but then the 2008 financial crisis happened and they ended up shelving those plans. So yeah, interesting history there. But anyways, that's just about all I have for today's video. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to check out our Discord server. The link will be in the description or in a pinned comment if you'd like to see previews of my work or talk with other people who are interested in Minecraft, aviation, gaming, or other cool things like this. Anyways, without further ado, thank you so much for watching. I'm Jordan, and I will see you in the next episode.